StudentSurvey.ie and its partner organisations, USI, THEA, the IEA and HCA. I'm delighted to be launching the National Report 2020 here today alongside the StudentSurvey.ie project manager. The partnership approach, taking every aspect of the delivery and management of the survey, is one of its most important features, and therefore it's quite appropriate that we launch it today at an event where partnership is very much running through the veins of this event. And firstly, I'd like to thank all of the members of the StudentSurvey.ie editorial group who, alongside the project manager, have played a central role in the development of this year's national report. All but 5 participating institutions had completed fieldwork for StudentSurvey.ie 2020 before the restrictions due to public health guidance related to COVID-19 were put in place, and the pivot to emerging questions require students to reflect on the academic year to date in its entirety, the majority of which would have been unaffected by COVID-19. It's important also to note that the 2020 National Report therefore presents us with a comprehensive overview of the student experience before things change so dramatically. All of us here are conscious of the impact that the pandemic has had on the broader student experience, and that's something that is captured very neatly through this survey's focus on a broad range of activities encompassing those within and outside of the classroom. Whilst every effort has been made to encourage social interaction with and between students, particularly first-year undergraduates, there is no doubt that this is made very challenging in a blended or a mostly online environment. And this year's report therefore will play a key role in supporting institutions to plan and prioritise not just for the forthcoming semester, but for the next academic year in what is a continually uncertain public health landscape. In delving deeper into the feedback from their own data, it's crucial that institutions do so in partnership, and that ownership of the data is seen as being shared between all of the key stakeholders in the institution. Management, staff, not just academic, but all of those who play a central role in contributing to the student experience, as we heard from some of our keynotes earlier today, and of course students. Existing structures within an institution such as programme boards, staff student fora and academic council and its subcommittees should be used to their full advantage in analysing this data, but most importantly in making decisions on how it can be used and how it can be communicated back to the student body, and thus closing the feedback loop, the ever-going mission of higher education. There's a wealth of data available through the report, and it allows us to understand better the experience of a breadth of distinct student cohorts. We can find out more about the experience of international students, part-time and remote learners, and mature students amongst others, and can also compare the experience of students across various fields of study. We know only too well that students are not a homogeneous group, and indeed the last few months have demonstrated that some cohorts can be disproportionately impacted by changes to the learning environment, and that's something that's came through really neatly in a lot of the speeches we've heard today. Exploring this data at a granular level, accompanied by meaningful discussion with students from these groups, will enable institutions to make decisions that empower and support the needs of individual learners or groups of learners and avoid taking a one-size-fits-all approach. This survey was founded upon the principles of partnership and mutual ownership, and it works best at a local level when these same principles are its drivers. As has been mentioned earlier by both the Minister and indeed my co-pilot, students have demonstrated real leadership within higher education, particularly over the last 8 months, and it's really important that higher education institutions therefore give them a seat at the table when analysing the data produced by StudentSurvey.ie and commit to bringing these conversations forward in a meaningful way. The success of StudentSurvey.ie, and indeed of any initiative that seeks to hear the voices of students, can only truly be met when their voices are not just heard, but listened to and acted upon. And I'll now hand over to Siobhán to bring you through the report in greater detail.
Thanks, Kevin. Before I continue on with an overview of some of the results for 2020, I wish to emphasise that the unprecedented changes brought about by the COVID-19 global crisis have affected all of us and cannot be overlooked. Nevertheless, now more than ever, feedback from a national survey is needed from students navigating this landscape. StudentSurvey.ie Fieldwork 2021 is scheduled to take place in February-March 2021 in keeping with the normal schedule. The StudentSurvey.ie steering group wishes to take this opportunity to sincerely thank the staff and student representatives in the participating institutions who worked so hard with us on this project. We are depending on you once again to ensure that students in your institution have the opportunity to and are encouraged to make their voices heard. The PGR StudentSurvey.ie, that is the Irish Survey of Student Engagement for Postgraduate Research Students, our survey na haireann ar ran fáilte of na Mickling, the Vickling Taide Iarchéma, is also scheduled to take place in February and March 2021. PhD students and Masters by Research students in all StudentSurvey.ie participating institutions are invited to respond. This survey has moved to a biennial research fieldwork cycle, which means that the survey runs every second year. This means that it is all the more important that PhD students and Masters by Research students know that they can take the survey in February and March 2021. A number of changes have been made to the way that the results are presented in the StudentSurvey.ie National Report 2020. In the first instance, based on feedback from participating institutions, only a very small number of hard copies of the full report have been printed and circulated to participating institutions and stakeholder organisations. However, you will also have received a small number of the abridged version of the report, which is the full report without all of the appendices. Nevertheless, the full report with all of the supporting appendices is available for reading and download on the StudentSurvey.ie website for all interested parties. Secondly, in an effort to provide more very high-level national results in the National Report 2020, a table has been provided in the executive summary, which presents the indicator scores for each of the indicators in the survey for all students and broken down further. Nevertheless, readers are reminded of a number of key factors when reviewing these results. The first being that the indicator scores are calculated out of a maximum of 60, and indicator scores do not represent percentage scores. In interpreting the results, it is important to remember that indicator scores cannot be compared across indicators. That is, for example, higher order learning cannot be compared with the indicator score for reflective and integrative learning. However, results can be compared for different groups within the one indicator. For example, the score for higher order learning can be compared for first year undergraduates compared to final year undergraduates and top postgraduates, for instance. Final change to how the results are presented for 2020 is our new StudentSurvey.ie results pullout. This presents all of the results for all questions in the survey for all students, grouped by those who agreed with each of the statements in the survey. It is important to note as well that this document is available as a downloadable and editable infographic for participating institutions to use. You can download it and replace the national results with results for your own institution and then disseminate this as appropriate amongst your staff and students. StudentSurvey.ie questions that closely relate to the experience of first year students in higher education in Ireland were examined in the Looking Deeper chapter for the StudentSurvey.ie National Report 2020. The results were combined for the last 3 years for 2018 to 2020, and the goal was to establish a baseline for future comparisons, which will include a comparison with the first years of 2020 to 2021, which will be undertaken to coincide with the StudentSurvey.ie National Report 2021. The investigation of first year students' engagement focused on the factors which are most affected by necessitated changes to the traditional on-campus higher education model, such as interaction with staff and other students and support for students' academic, civic and social engagement. The following indicators in StudentSurvey.ie capture the aspects of student engagement which are most likely to be impacted by the change to on-campus attendance, and they are collaborative learning, student-faculty interaction, quality of interactions and supportive environment. In total, 59,984 first-year undergraduate responses to the survey over these years were included, which is a significant evidence base. Variables such as mode of study, term time residence, undergraduate program type, institution type, field of study, gender, age and country of domicile were considered when analysing the data. So finally, the StudentSurvey.ie National Report group intends to return to the same questions in 2021 to evaluate the impact of the COVID-19 public health measures on the first-year undergraduate respondents, predominantly for whom 2020 to 2021 will be their first experience of higher education. Any comparison of the engagement profile and practices of part-time and remote students in 2018 to 2020 with future students must consider the fact that institutions are taking additional measures to facilitate the necessary remote and blended or hybrid model in the current academic year. Nonetheless, the results of StudentSurvey.ie represent a significant evidence base to consider previous first-year undergraduate respondents' experiences in higher education, especially in looking at differences between full-time students, part-time students and students studying remotely. In the following videos, current first-year students were invited to reflect upon some of these results presented in the Looking Deeper chapter in the StudentSurvey.ie National Report 2020 and to comment on their reflections upon those results and also their own experiences. At this point, I will hand over to the first-year students.
I think
my experience with fellow students definitely in and around a 5, but absolutely not excellent. People are getting creative. We have Zoom calls and Netflix parties and quizzes and all these good things, but it's definitely not the same and definitely can feel very isolated and alone. But people are getting creative, to be fair, because we have no other choice and we just make do. But it's definitely in and around a 5, not excellent.
Working with my classmates has been a positive experience so far. In my course, we don't do many assignments or projects, but rather 3 practical classes a week. These have been great because we can support each other in the midst of a pandemic where starting college is pretty hard. In terms of learning, we ask each other questions and we help each other out. And I think it's been the best way to learn the course content so far.
Yeah, so I'm not surprised at all by the number being so high in previous years of how great the interactions students had with each other were, but I'd be very surprised if the numbers stayed that high this year. They'd definitely be down around a 3, mostly based on the fact that we don't have the opportunity to interact with each other as much, and there's just so much less going on with regard to college, and it's all stay at home because of COVID. So the number would definitely have to be a lot lower this year.
Online learning, while necessary, has been a lot more challenging. It's much easier to misconstrue what someone is saying online, and it's easier to miss points.
Yeah, so personally, I'm not surprised by the finding that 71% of students only spoke to their lecturers with regard to coursework. I suppose I'd say this year in the current climate, there'd probably be more talking about how the course is going to be run and different ways of getting the students more involved with the course and getting the work done, as opposed to specifically the work itself. But I still wouldn't be surprised if the number stayed around 71% this year.
We have, I don't think first years have really damn options, because with Corona we can't really, there have to be a social distance involved, and you barely see the lecture. So I only see them in the classroom, and I only talk to them when I need to ask a question, and that's about it. Like, we don't interact outside of that.
I've been very fortunate this year as the majority of my classes are still on campus. I have been able to interact with tutors and lecturers fairly normally while still adhering to COVID protocols. The upside of social distancing is that I've had a lot more opportunities to talk to my tutors one-on-one and being able to ask questions freely.
What the institution could do to better support our overall well-being is remind us how to work-life balance from our bedroom, and to remind us how to have quiet rest time where we don't worry about college-related things.
Thank you, colleagues. I think it's coming back to me, Kevin. I think we're going to, colleagues, if you don't mind, we're going to hold video 6 and maybe we'll share that later. We are a little bit over time, so luckily Laura is messaging me on another channel, so thank you, Laura, for that. It's been an amazing experience for all of us. So it just remains for me to do three final things. First of all, is to thank all of you individually, collectively. Kevin, thank you for being the great partner and working on this together. Laura, thank you for your leadership. Siobhán and all the team. It's just a remarkable partnership, I think, which we demonstrate this morning, keeping this plane in the sky. I was struck by Maurice's comment in the chat, and she said, I thought she called it a slow movement of staff engagement. Like we have the slow food group. I thought it was a really interesting metaphor for me, and it chimes with something I heard a long time ago. I'm not sure where I heard it. I think it might be an African phrase. I've certainly heard it in North America. I've certainly heard it in China, and I've used the phrase myself, and I think it's relevant today. And it goes something like this. It says, if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. I think all of us as students, faculty, universities, educators want all of us to go far, and I think we can only do that together through true partnership, empowering our staff and our students to enable something special to happen. You've certainly made something special happen this morning, so I want to thank all of you individually and collectively for your inspiration, for your partnership, and for your contributions. So it just remains for me to say that you will. I wish I could deliver you all lunch virtually, but unfortunately we can't do that now. Normally we'd go into a room and meet each other. So I think this is the end of the session, but there will be chat rooms will work. There's 2 chat rooms. There's a holding suite and a sliding door. There's all sorts of. Laura, I think you might better be able to explain this than I think actually. But there are 2 chat rooms being developed in the afternoon for further discussion. Laura, do you want to come in? Yeah.